it's Heraclitus 1 here. In this clip, I wish to argue not only that God doesn't exist, but that such an entity cannot exist, that it's illogical. Overall, the logic for this is quite straightforward and goes like this. Any view of the world that holds that there are two ways of being real is utterly illogical. Religion is one such view. Therefore, religious views of the world are illogical. Let's look first at the most important premise here. The idea of things being real in radically different ways, that is, philosophical dualism, is not confined to religion. Plato, who lived between 428 and 348 BCA, put forward the theory of the forms. In this theory were two proposed levels of reality. The high, more abstract level was said to be populated by ideal forms. The lower level consisted of all the ordinary things that resembled, or partook, or even strove to be like the ideal forms. Some did this better than others, but they could never do this exactly. For example, an everyday thing like a wheel came under the ideal form of circularity. The better it approximated the latter, the more it partook of circularity. The important point here is that Plato put forward a theory that was dualistic. Things on each level were said to be real in radically different ways. Not only that, but it was said that they were known in different ways. Things at the ordinary lower level, like donuts, wheels, coins and so on, were known by means of our senses, sight, touch. Things at the higher level, the ideal forms, were said to be known by an entirely different faculty, for example by reason or intuition. Let's now look at Descartes. Descartes, who was born about 1596 and lived till he was 1650, he also divided reality into two different parts, or ways of being real. After pretending for a while to doubt everything, he got down to the business of saying lots of things about reality. For Descartes, things were either physical, that is, extended in space and time, or immaterial. At the lower level were the things that were perceived by the ordinary senses. In fact, he viewed life forms as essentially machine-like. But people were different in that they had minds, which were somehow above the raw mechanistic senses. Minds, unlike bodies, were not extended. The groundwork was being prepared for the notion of the soul. Immanuel Kant, 1724 to 1804. Kant was another proponent of dualism. He divided reality up into phenomena and noumena, and this division was primarily about how we can and cannot know things. For Kant, phenomena is what we are constrained to know. He said that our minds are so made that we can know things only in a certain limited number of ways. For example, as spatial, temporal, or extended in time, and causal. These were called categories. According to Kant, we cannot, on principle, he reckoned, know things as they are. This is where noumena comes in. It is noumena, things as they really are, in themselves, that we cannot ever know properly. Another example of how reality may be divided up in radically different ways can be seen when we examine the commonplace assumptions of morality. At a lower, more naturalistic level, we have thoughts, strivings, and actions. Above these actual behaviours, we have a set of proposed higher level entities, such as moral standards. It is by means of these standards that we or others are said to make moral judgments. Both actions and standards are believed to exist in radically different ways. Furthermore, as with Plato's forms, it is believed that there are radically different modes by which we observe or apprehend entities occupying each level. Strivings and actions are taken as partaking more or less of the higher reality. Here we find the distinction between actuality, is, and moral, ought. I've only mentioned a few ways in which reality, what is, can be divided up. In each case, and there are many more, it is proposed or assumed, 1. That reality is dualistic, that there are two radically different ways of being real, and 2. That with this goes radically different ways of knowing these levels. What I'm contending here is that all attempts to divide reality in such ways are utterly illogical. The reason for this is as follows. If we propose that the levels are so radically different, then we cannot possibly connect them. We cannot see the proposed relationships that are said to exist between the entities existing on each level. On what level can we see ordinary things approximating the forms that they come under? We can't do this on the level of the historical. We can't on the level of the forms either. Descartes had the problem of how something material could influence or be influenced by the essentially mental. Kant could only know about phenomena, so how could he know about the noumena that he said, in principle, cannot be known as it is? How can a moralist know that action X is related to standard Y by looking at the level of standards alone, or at the levels of action alone? In each of these examples we find that dualistic ways of looking at the world, while having a superficial plausibility about them, soon start to get messy when we take the proposed relationships between them seriously. One way of trying to wiggle out of the problem is to propose a third level of reality, a more encompassing level in which both of the others and their relationships can be observed. And what do we finally wind up with then? Well, an incoherent mishmash of proposed levels of reality, of ways of being real and known, that is totally out of kilter with either of the former levels. This supra-level will contain physical and non-physical things, thus stuffing up the point of making the initial division of reality in the first place. If both kinds of things, and both ways of knowing, can be accounted for by the new level, the new big level, then why not simply ditch the original distinction between levels and view all things as existing on a single physical level? We all know, at least, that such a level exists, and perhaps with a bit of work we can find better naturalistic explanations for the original higher entities, or discover that many of them are unreal after all. I don't think that it takes a great deal of intelligence to see that religion is a dualistic system of thought. The natural world and God are viewed as being real in different ways. Ways of knowing each are also quite different. Like Descartes' pineal gland, said to connect the extended with the unextended, we have the notion of a special faculty with a foot in both camps, so to speak. That is, the soul. To grasp the relationship between God and the ordinary world, especially us, we need to propose a wider reality encompassing both heaven and earth, so to speak. The whole exercise is every bit as illogical as the other dualisms sketched out above.